Folk, Islam cannot separate mosque from state. We might say church from state. In Christianity, the apostles, even Jesus himself, never went to a ruler for you to pass laws enforcing our own morality. No Muslim is any harder against drinking than I am. And no Muslim is any harder against tobacco use, smoking it is, than I am. No Muslim is any harder against adultery than I am, or against some of these other vices of life than I am. But the difference between me and them is I believe that these issues should be settled by each person individually and not by Big Brother looking over his shoulder and saying you're not allowed to smoke, you're not allowed to gamble, you're not allowed to drink. No, anyone have any comment? Do you understand what I'm saying? We, each of us, should be free to decide these issues for ourselves and not have Big Brother slam it down our throats. And I think this is the difference between why the Western world wound up bursting out at seams and overspreading the globe, and the Islamic world wound up becoming stagnant and they haven't contributed anything to knowledge in 1,000 years, literally. I'm about to tell what they did contribute before that time. But they fell behind. Now, I had a student say, I mean, here's a man about my age, in another country, I don't see what forbidding tobacco or forbidding alcohol has to do with scientific progress. And you ever see how the nation forbids tobacco use by statute, or forbids drinking by statute, how that would hinder scientific progress? It's a thing called freedom, folk. Scientific progress is made by people who are free to dissent. When the Wright brothers invented the airplane, a college professor of all people wrote an article proving that man would never fly in a heavier-than-air machine. His mathematics they used to prove it was missing a few equations that should have been inserted in there, but nevertheless he didn't know that. The Wright brothers went ahead and put one together anyway and flew it. They were dissenters. Robert Fulton put together a steamship and it was called Fulton's Folly. A man named Drake began drilling holes in the ground to try to find oil. They called the project Drake's Folly. These men were dissenters. The freedom to dissent is what makes for progress. Take dissent away, and the society becomes stagnant. If the Wright brothers had lived in an Islamic country, would they have invented the airplane? I mean, you can decide for yourself. If Thomas Edison had lived in an Islamic country, would he have invented anything at all? Yeah, and I'm not going to attempt to answer that. We don't know. Yes?
So what you're trying to say is there's no need for a leader in a society?
Is what?
Like there's no need for a leader in a society?
Oh, there is some need for rules. I mean, I'm not saying we should all go out in our automobiles right now and drive on any side of the road we want to and don't pay any attention to the stop signs or red lights. We have to have certain rules. But the idea is to give each individual as much freedom as the government possibly can. And let each individual as much as possible decide for himself. I mean, such things as issues as drinking. I mean, personally, I've decided for myself. I mean, I've outlawed it in my personal life.
It's like in every society, there's a leader who has to enforce the rules.
Yeah, yes.
Like
such as they are.
Have the priests and the Muslims, I mean, the Islamic group, right. They also have the imams. So yeah. They give out they enforce the rules. It's not necessarily forcing people to do what they're supposed to do, but they just
again, the issue is what rules do they enforce? And are the rules they enforce really the rules that would lead to them progressing to a higher society?
Just like a reminder,
Yeah.
Let them know this is what you're supposed to do.
I'll tell you, I believe now that persons like preachers can get up and say, I think it's wrong to drink. And I say, yeah, in fact, on a personal note, and I seldom talk about it, I go to a church where my pastor does say it's wrong to drink. But I'm free to either go or not go. In other words, I go by choice, not by mandate. Whether I go or not is my decision, it's not mandated. Now, as when I say you should be free to drink, I want to remind you of something, folks. If you develop a problem with drinking, whose fault is that? Your fault or the fault of the state that allowed it? I had a student from a Muslim, I mean, he was a Muslim student, tell me that it's the fault of the state that allowed it. I couldn't agree less. If you develop a problem, and if you decide you're going to look at pornography and it becomes a habit and you can't let go of it, whose fault is it? Your fault. Don't blame the state. Don't blame somebody else. It's your fault.
It's probably the blame of everybody. Like everybody's blame is different. Because I'm a
Yeah,
Muslim
right.
and I don't believe in that. I believe that if you do something, you justify what you do.
Right, yeah.
It's your own problem. Yeah. It's not necessarily.
As much as possible,
Loud on
the
it.
state should give its people as much freedom as they can. And as much, but again, that doesn't mean I'm going to advocate that you go out here and go any speed you want to in your car and run every red light there is and every stop sign there is, or drive on any side of the road you want to. I mean, the result is fatal. We have to have some rules. We have to, but there's certain rules that sound right, that appear to be right, and yet lead to stagnation. Again, just like there are no games of chance. I mean, hey, I can agree card playing can become addictive. Rolling dice. I mean, I don't know if you have, but they used to be back in the olden days, people would entertain themselves by rolling dice and seeing which person had the most lucky number. Again, that can become addictive. But again, it's up to each individual to decide for himself rather than being mandated by the state. In this state, we don't drink, we don't. A lot of these issues are better off if left alone by the state and left up to each individual to handle. Now, women. I'm going to elaborate on this. Muslims are afraid, super afraid of their women. Why? Because it is well known that it's up to the women to pass a religion on to the next generation. The men get busy with their careers or job, but the women pass the religion down to the next generation. If they lose their women, Islam is lost. Well, and here's why they're afraid of their women, or afraid to lose women. Muslim women these days are being exposed more and more to Western women. And they're finding out that other women outside, not just West, but even Chinese women and women in India, women in Europe, and women in North and South America are able to go out and get their own jobs, buy their own cars, divorce their husbands if they want to, handle their own money, set up their own banking accounts, their own checking accounts. And Muslims look on women as being property. They are to be owned by the men. Again, if what I'm saying is offensive, you're welcome to disagree with that, but this is what I have understood from my studying of Islam. They look on women as being owned by the men, and if the men ever lose this control they have, they believe that Islam is doomed. And to some extent it is. So they feel like they must keep control, and at the same time, Muslim women are exposed to Western women who have different dress styles. Muslim women were told to be so modest that they were to cover everything, including their face, with a veil. So they're the most covered women on the face of the earth. But a lot of them went to Western countries, and some of them applied for a driver's license. And they said, no, we want our picture made with a veil. And all of you, I think, know that your picture is put on your driver's license. This is pretty much, well, they said, no, we want our face covered because that's a religion. Finally, one nation after another, including France and including France, I believe, led the way. The United States and Britain followed. That Muslim women must uncover their faces long enough to have their picture made. Again, folks, this is the only decision that they felt like they could make with any practicality. It has been said that Muhammad did not even believe that women went to paradise when they died, that women were simply without a soul. Now, I have not been able to see this in actual Islamic writings, so if any of you have seen it or know about it, you're welcome to comment. But that only the men went to paradise. And you might have, what about the 70 virgins that persons who died in the jihad were promised. They were creations created in the afterlife, not women who had once been alive on this earth. Contact between the sexes is forbidden. Now, if you're a young unmarried man, you are not expected to talk. I mean, you're not allowed to talk to any woman except for maybe your sister or your mother. But to go out and have any kind of conversation with a woman you're not related to is forbidden. You might ask, how do they get married? Their marriages are arranged by their parents. Father and mother get together, and they get together with a neighbor who has a daughter. And I'm speaking like if you're a young man and living in Islam. And they try to, your parents and their parents try to match up their children. Supposedly, the young woman has a right to say no to a marriage offer from a man, but the marriages are arranged by the parents. And oftentimes, the young people who are about to get married don't even speak to each other before they're married. That's why you might ask, what, don't they worry about incompatibility? No, Islamic women are not allowed to be incompatible. Now, I had a Muslim woman in my class this time last year who spoke up, and she said that she believed that one of the reasons that Islam has not made any progress in the last 1,000 years is the way they treat their women. I said, well, I'm a little bit surprised you say that, but I'm not going to argue. Again, she said that being a Muslim. And I had another woman just last semester, when it was second semester of world history, we were talking about Muslim women, and she told the whole class that she believed that the problem with Islam was the way it treated its women. So their women are beginning to catch on to Western ideals and Western values, and it comes into conflict with what they have been taught, and it comes into conflict with what the men have been taught, and again, the men are very worried. Now, Islam is not the only religion that comes into conflict with world values. Christianity does sometimes. Hinduism has. Every worldview, every religion has at some point come into conflict with the prevailing ideas going on in the world at that time. I mean, at the time. And again, Islam is not the only one. Christianity comes into conflict with science often, modern science, and Hinduism comes into conflict because of its caste system. Some of the rest of the world will condemn them for it. And Islam has things that... Now, about the 12, back to the 12 imams, one of them put forth a law that's called Sharia law. Actually, it was, I believe, Abu Bakr, that Muhammad's successor, may have been set forth Sharia law. Sharia law was something we never heard of a few years ago. But it's come to fore because a lot of Muslims are in favor of it. Sharia law, I'm not going to write it. Well, yes, I'm trying to write it. Among other things, it says that women who commit adultery should be stoned to death. But men who commit adultery will not be stoned to death. In other words, it's a double standard, pure and simple. Women are only allowed to have one husband. Islam allows men to have up to 4 wives. Sharia, S-H-I-R-I-A, I believe that's the right spelling. Now, among other things Sharia law teaches is that persons who convert from Islam to any other religion are to be stoned to death. And there was a case of a man in Afghanistan who decided to convert to Christianity. They were about to kill him, but finally the Italian government said, hey, we'll sneak him off to our country, and he lives in Italy somewhere under a different identity and assumed name. So hopefully the Islamic people won't find him. If they find him, it's an automatic death sentence. Getting back to the subject of their women, just in a couple of days, last couple of days, a Muslim woman, actually she's a Muslim woman, made news. She was an Afghanistan woman, I believe, or Pakistani woman, who said that women should be educated. As a result, she was shot in the head. Oh, how many, you've heard this story, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
She won the
similar.
Nobel Peace Prize.
What's that?
She won the Nobel Peace Prize.
No, won a Nobel Peace Prize. That's what I was getting at. Yeah, I made news again. Won a Nobel Peace Prize. I believe it's like her second Nobel Prize. All right. Again,
On her skull came out.
they took her to Britain, and there supposedly she's safe from Islam, but if they catch her, the Islamic people, they would be more than happy to destroy her. And what she's saying is that women should be educated. And again, the Islamic people are very, very much afraid of that. Now, I'll say this about some of the Islamic women I've had in my classes. They generally do very, very well academically. And why is that? One reason is they're motivated to better themselves. And reason number two is they don't have the distractions that a lot of Western women have. Distraction with social life, parties, dating, and this kind of stuff. So they are between motivation and not having distractions. A lot of times they do very, very well. And I'm not the only teacher here who thinks so. All right.